there, Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do to the like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel, please also do that while you're here. Let's get into it. Today, we are continuing our series on the top 25 college basketball stories of the past 25 years, which is, as you know by now, really just Norlander's top 25 college basketball stories of the past 25 years, with the exception of Bob Knight's termination at Indiana on September 10th, 2000. Norlander, we've already done numbers 25 through number 6, so we've made it. That means we made it to the top 5. Are you ready to unveil the next 5, the final 5 of the top 25 college basketball stories of the past 25 years, with the exception of Indiana firing Bob Knight back in September of 2000?
It's also included, Parrish. We're good to go there. Let it go. I included it on the last show. By the way, are you good with the top 5? Did I miss any stories overall? You know what the top 5 is going to be. You hopped in that Google Doc. You saw what I had there. Broadly speaking, did I miss on any or did I hit it?
There is nothing glaring that immediately popped into my head. I could quibble with the order just a little bit, but to answer your question, I think all 5 of the very reasonable and totally memorable, massive stories from the past 25 years. Were they all crystal clear, bigger than Bob Knight's termination at Indiana? You know, who am I to say?
Correct.
But they're all, I don't think anything seems out of place.
Okay. As a reminder, if you're listening to this episode but haven't listened to previous ones, this has been it's been a summer series. We have 4 previous ones in the feed. Go find them, watch them on YouTube. There will be a story that publishes accordingly so, and that you can read on this on cbssports.com or on your CBS Sports app. That'll be succinct little capsules that touches on all of them. But let's get to it. Let's get to the 5 biggest stories in men's college basketball since the year 2000. And number 5 is the greatest shot that never was. Gordon Hayward's half-court heave misses at the buzzer for Butler, which makes back-to-back title games. So it's not just Hayward's shot, although that's a big-time deal. It is the reason why I put this so high. 2 reasons primarily. 1, it's the most famous missed shot in basketball history at this point.
That is disrespectful to Dozier for the championship.
Sorry. Dozier for the championship doesn't match up. It just doesn't. I don't know what to tell you. Dozier for the championship existed for 2 years until Hayward came along. Oh, it almost went in. And it took it away. So you got that element. And then we have a mid-major program from the Horizon League making the title game in back-to-back years. I don't think we're ever seeing this again. I don't think we're seeing a mid-major make that. Now, I think it's conceivable that, there'll be some charm will happen at some point in the next 5, 10, 15, 30 years. Well, I could see a mid-major win a national championship. We just got San Diego State to the title game not that long ago. FAU was in the Final Four. Maybe you get one that breaks through and wins a title. But the same mid-major program winning 5 games, at least 5 games in a row in back-to-back years to make the title game, I don't think we're ever seeing that again. It's a major story. It came against Duke, obviously, in year 1. Butler loses in year 2 against UConn. It's the 5th biggest story in my estimation of the past 25 years.
The only way it could happen in the current climate of college athletics is if it just popped like this. Like you happen to be at a mid-major, but somehow, some way you've ended up with multiple future NBA players. In this case, it's Gordon Hayward and Shelvin Mack, right? Mm-hmm. So you would see him, and you've got a uniquely gifted coaching talent.
Arguable prodigy coaching the team. Yeah, there's a lot of factors that
you would need to be a mid-major that has 2 future NBA players and a prodigy coach. All right, so good luck. But then you get there, and then for whatever reason, they all come back. They don't want to go to Duke or Tennessee or Kansas. They just all like, hey, we're brothers. We were close. Some boosters like, we'll get the money and figure it out how to make everybody comfortable staying. And then you go try to make another. But that's a lot of stuff that's got to line up. I think you're more right to as I noted on a previous episode of the Eye on College Basketball podcast. I think if that were to ever happen, by then my ashes are already spread in the Mississippi River.
Okay, we don't have to get into that. By the way, if you're watching on YouTube right now, there's a shot here, Getty Images, famous shot of Gordon Hayward's shot that's blocking out Parrish, which actually, this is production value I can appreciate. Actually, this is kind of cool. I dig this. Okay, on this note here, I looked at this photo because this is also going to be on the website, this famous shot of Hayward. I don't see you here, Parrish. Now, I was also looking for a Parrish with hair. Where I feel like maybe I asked you on this on the pod, but you know what? If I did, I don't remember. Where were you seated at the shot? What do you remember about the 2010 championship game? Duke beats Butler 61-59. Oh, by the way, this was the first title game in more than 2 decades to be decided by a single basket. What do you remember about that night, that moment?
I don't remember where I was sitting. I do remember my main memory from the night is being in the Butler locker room after the game. And it was just so quiet. Just so quiet. People like genuinely distraught. Because you can never imagine, like when you enroll at Duke, you imagine you might be on a stage like that. When you enroll at Kentucky, you imagine you might be on a stage like that, I assume. When you enroll at Butler, like that's not even on your radar. You know, like Gordon Hayward, like barely played summer basketball. He was like a tennis player which is why he was not recruited to the extent another player of his caliber might be recruited and ended up at Butler. At least that's part of the story. But to never even imagine this could be your life. And then it happens to be not only you're in the national championship game, but literally it's in Indianapolis. School is down the street. I mean, school's down the street. If I remember correctly, the players went to class on Monday and then played the title game.
Same wavelength here, GP. I want to say that's the case. By the way, keep going. But as we see this photo here, I love the shot from above. Again, you got to watch on YouTube to see this. So go check through if you're listening. You've got Kyle Singler splayed on the floor because Matt Howard levels an incredible screen. Were you like me? I watched the final 3 minutes of this game a couple days ago, and even the way this even played out, Butler had the game on its racket. Parrish, continue.
Yes. So I went back and watched it as well. That screen, I don't want to say it was an illegal screen. I want to say it was violent. he got him good. How about this? I went back and watched a lot of different versions of the Gordon Hayward shot, and I ended up on one. It was like the Blue Devil Radio Network or something. And they got hung up on the screen that they kind of missed the Hayward shot. It was like, and that's a foul. That's a foul. They were all fired up about that. So the main thing I remember is being in that locker room afterward and just being surrounded by young men who had realized they just had it. And maybe it could still be the Disney movie someday, but like they had the movie written, the young head coach, the mid-major program. They're doing it, X miles away from campus against Coach K and Duke. Like that's a movie. That's a 30 for 30 a million times. And it was right there. And though everybody remembers that Gordon Hayward shot, like he had another one a few seconds earlier that was much closer. He got there a little fadeaway jumper at the baseline that just missed. But what is interesting about this moment in this game is that it's one of the few times in history where the miss is more famous than anything else.
Yep.
When you think of that title game, you don't think of Kyle Singler. You don't think of Nolan Smith. You think of Gordon Hayward. You think of that missed shot. And just like if you go to YouTube right now and all you do is type in Gordon Hayward shot. Gordon Hayward had played the NBA. He's hit a lot of shots, missed a lot of shots. Gordon Hayward shot automatically directs straight to the miss. He is a player who is most famous for almost making a shot as opposed to any shot he's ever made. And the whole thing, I've enjoyed going back and looking at this stuff again because it's just a trip down memory lane. Let me walk you through. I don't have to walk you through it. You watched it, but for people who haven't seen it lately or didn't see it at all. So we're the final 15 seconds. Duke's up 60-59. Butler has the ball, and that's when Gordon Hayward misses that little baseline fadeaway. Duke rebounds, quick foul. So it's 60-59. Duke, other end, 3.6 seconds left. Brian Zubac's at the line. Makes the first and then misses the second intentionally. And
Butler has no timeouts.
Rebound, Hayward, strong rebound, and then he takes 4 dribbles, launches from half court, off the backboard, off the rim. It falls to the hardwood, game over. But if he makes that shot, is that an all-time blunder from Kay and the Duke staff? Because they would have intentionally missed a free throw that allowed them to lose in regulation, whereas if you make that free throw, you're not losing in regulation. Now, let me be clear before I turn it over to you. I understand there is a statistical, mathematical argument to be made that the likelihood of you losing that game decreases by missing the free throw intentionally, because a lot of stuff has to happen. Beyond that, I saw somebody else make this point. Kyle Singler and Nolan Smith, I think, had already, they played 40 minutes. They played the whole game. Zubek and Lance Thomas both had 4 fouls. Momentum is with the other team. The crowd's with the other team. There was some thought, we don't want to get to overtime because this will not go well for us. So let's decrease the likelihood that they could get a good shot off. Therefore, decrease the likelihood that they could make a 3. But we are putting ourselves at risk of losing in regulation. It's a calculated decision. I believe the numbers actually favor what they did, if you want to get real nerdy about it. But, buddy, I don't care what the numbers say. You intentionally miss a free throw and then lose at the buzzer in regulation, they're going to talk about you on TV the next morning.
They will, but they will forget about it 2 weeks later and 15 years later as we're talking about this. Because if Gordon Hayward makes that shot, because it's Butler, the mid-major, playing against Duke, the blue blood of all blue bloods, if he hits a half-court shot to win the national championship, I think it's the most famous buzzer beater in the history of basketball, and it has minimal chance of ever being topped because it would have done something that had never been achieved before, with the mid-major winning the NCAA title, doing it against a blue blood under those circumstances. So that overwhelmingly becomes the story. What you just laid out there with the 4 fouls, even before the 15 seconds to go, Ronald Norad and Shelvin Mack induced Brian Zubek into a turnover with 33 seconds to go. And again, go back and watch the final 3 minutes of this game. The broadcast really picks up on, I was starting to get, I know the outcome and I'm starting to get invested in it, watching it all over again. It was just incredible. And I've said this on the podcast, but I'll say it once more. It's not a proud moment for me, but it's nonetheless true. This was the last Final Four I didn't cover. I applied to get credentialed for College Hoops Journal. And it was the last year the NCAA did not approve independent media and bloggers for, because at that point I was writing for College Hoops Journal, my own site, stringing for Yahoo and stringing for Fox Sports, in addition to being a sports editor here in Connecticut. And so I didn't get approved, and I wanted to go. I'd saved up some money. I was going to, just try and make it happen somehow, some way. And so I couldn't go. Here I am at home. I remember I was my now wife, we were then just dating, watched it at her parents' place because we were in between moving from one place to another. So there was this gap where we weren't living in an apartment on our own. And I did not want the shot to go in because I was never going to be able to live with myself thinking that if I wanted to go cover this event and I got shot down, and if this is how this ends and I wasn't there to document it. And so there was a part of me that was actually relieved when it didn't go in, because it just would have just stuck with me forever. Having said that, here and now, obviously the shot going in would have been an all-time story and whatever. But I do remember it in the moment being if Butler wins this game and I'm not even there,
that's what I remember.
There was an element to that being come on, man, this is really going to happen. I was excited, but at the same time, God, I so badly want to be there. And I was there the next year. I covered the 2011 Final Four. Butler loses in the weird juxtaposition, GP, is that this is one of the all-time title games. Butler had not, it set a record. I had forgotten this, but relearned it with research. They were the first team in the shot clock era to not allow a team in 5 consecutive tournament games get to 60 points. Duke only got to 61, but it was an incredibly riveting title game. And then the next year, I think objectively, it's the worst title game in the modern era. It was just a 53-41 UConn win, whatever. But it's just, it's an amazing thing to look back on. When the piece goes up, I'm not going to dive into it here because we want to keep the show moving, but I go back a little bit along their NCAA tournament routes and what they did, and then the rosters and all. This was also John Shires in 2010. It was his last game as a Duke player, oh, by the way. Just a lot going on there.
Those pictures of that Butler locker room, that is exactly what I remember. Just men sitting there.
Yeah. Which you can see on YouTube. If you're listening, it's on the YouTube feed right now.
Very distraught, and it was just quiet. It was uncomfortable to even try to talk to them. That's the job, I guess. But it was uncomfortable even try to talk to them because you felt like you were witnessing just a really, low moment in their sports lives. Obviously, big picture, there's more to life than this stuff. But that was one of the more disappointing locker rooms I've ever been in, or maybe I should just say it this way. I don't remember ever being in a locker room that was that quiet. There was no chit-chatting. There was no, nobody was loud and mad. It was just quiet. Nobody was saying anything to anybody. And even when you tried to talk to the players, it felt like it was just whispers, like you were just whispering to each other. It was that's the main thing I remember about the entire Final Four is being in that locker room. I have no idea what else I did that weekend, but I remember being in that locker room and watching those young people like just really hurt.
Yeah. That was the best Butler team ever, by the way. It was top 10 in per possession defense.
They were awesome. The next Butler team was not nearly as good as this one.
And that Butler team that made the title game, they'd won 25 in a row up to the Duke game. They were a 5 seed. I think
it probably should have been better than that. And then I want to say that Butler team was the only team that season that didn't lose a game against league competition a lot there. And then the next year they were an 8 seed. And they had games against Old Dominion and Pitt as an 8 seed where they easily could have lost either of those. The game against Pitt was infamous for just what happened at the end there. Go and look it up. We won't bog down the show here with it, but they did. Nevertheless, I mean, Butler made it to back-to-back title games. In my opinion, it's not something that should just be like, oh, I remember when that happened. No, this is, to me, is one of the biggest stories that the sport has seen. It speaks to the power and the appeal of the NCAA tournament and what can be possible, and the greatest shot that never was. Let's keep it moving. And just one thing, if people need to like understand. So, okay, neat story, but like, is it really that big? It is also so big of a story. It quite literally created conference realignment.
Yes. And it certainly helped aid it for sure. No doubt about it.
This is how Butler went from the Horizon to the A10 and then from the A10 to the Big East. Like Butler changed its entire place in the sports world because of these two basketball teams that went back to back. And like, let's be a little more specific with it. Brad Stevens did this.
He did indeed. Let's keep it moving. We'll go to number 4, but actually, GP, I'll toss us a break here. Number 4, big story, infamous story, bad story. Some of the details maybe even forgotten so far after the fact. We'll get to that. But first, let's take a quick break.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
Norlander, we are up to number 4, top 25 biggest college basketball stories of the past 25 years, and I'll let you introduce it.
Yeah, this is the worst story on the list. It's one of the few stories where when it happened, I was still in college at the time, wasn't covering college basketball. This wasn't in the middle of the season. So there are parts of this that I just don't have memory of. I remember the story. I remember seeing it being a story, but it was not something that I was actively going to try and read about every single day on websites, ESPN.com, et cetera, et cetera. But it is a big one. And that is the murder of a player at Baylor, the cover-up that ensued, and the near death of a program. It's the Baylor basketball scandal from 2003. Most notably, and I don't know what to say. It's just an awful story. It involves one Baylor player, Carlton Dotson, killing another, Patrick Dennehy, in mid-June of 2003. Dennehy was killed with 2 shots to the head. It would be weeks before his body was uncovered. Dave Bliss was the coach at Baylor at the time. This is the one story on the list where there's just, a lot of the stuff is, we go back, we reflect on it, and we find this is just as bad as it gets. Bliss tried to cover it up, tried to paint Dennehy as a drug dealer. This was discovered in the summer of 2003 because Bliss had just hired an assistant on his staff. And I think the way the story goes is there was kind of one conversation about this stuff that kind of rattled this young assistant. And then there were subsequent conversations in the next 2-3 days with players and the staff, and Bliss got taped, basically saying, we need to, the direct quote from the tapes I pulled from the AP reporting back then is, quote, what we've got to do here is create drugs, Bliss said, adding, quote, it's not like we created his situation. We're the victims, end quote, which is just awful stuff. Bliss had paid for it. Dennehy was not a scholarship player, was a good player, but he had transferred there. He had paid for his tuition. Bliss was trying to cover this up, trying to say that Dennehy was going to pay for his way through with drug dealing. He received a 10-year show cause. Baylor's program almost and really justifiably could have been given the death penalty. It really could have. The NCAA spared it from that. It had to not play non-conference games for a year as a result. Scott Drew was hired, and we know the back end of this. But those are the broad parameters of this. There's a couple more things I can add before we keep going. But yeah, you were working at the Commercial Appeal at the time. Parrish, can you remember what it was like to be on the outskirts of college basketball media when this story started to develop, and how it grew into something really, really ugly really quickly in the summer of 2003?
Yes. And oddly, I had like a role in reporting on this, and not anything significant. I'm not trying to overstate it, but like I just had my own, even as a beat writer in Memphis, I had my own little local connection to it, because there was a young man named Harvey Thomas who had went to high school. He wasn't from Memphis, but he had transferred to Hamilton High in Memphis, which was at the time a prominent basketball school. It's where Todd Day went to school. It's where Sean Williams went to school. Dedrick Lawson, Young Dolph, rest in peace, Flipper. Harvey Thomas went to school at Hamilton, and he was roommates with Patrick Dennehy and Carlton Dodson. So when this goes down, one of the first things that you hear is, and the roommate, Harvey Thomas, and I'm like, oh, wow, the dude from Hamilton High is roommates with these two players. And I just remember having to try to connect with him, people around him, and do whatever reporting I could do from that angle of the story. And I went last night and Googled and tried to, I couldn't find any of it, but like, I remembered there was a Memphis connection to it, and it just took a few Google searches and I figured out it was Harvey Thomas. So I was actually following the story pretty closely because I was reporting on it in my own little way. It was just bananas. You've run through most of it. Let me try to connect some dots here. So Dennehy and Dodson, they're both at Baylor. They're roommates. They're friends. And at some point, Patrick Dennehy is missing. That's the way it's initially reported. He's just missing. It's not like he was shot at a club or, at a house party or something like that. So it wasn't like, yes, and there were witnesses and the cops showed up and somebody was arrested and he was rushed to the hospital. It's just like nobody can get in touch with Patrick Dennehy. He's just missing. On June 25th of 2003, his car is found in Virginia. The tags are removed. Meantime, Carlton Dodson has allegedly already told one of his cousins that he and Dennehy were shooting guns, had an argument, and that he shot him. He had already admitted to it to somebody, and he was subsequently charged with murder on July 21st. 5 days after that, Dennehy's decomposed body was found in a gravel pit near Waco, and Carlton Dodson had apparently told authorities that he believed demons were after him because he was, quote, Jesus, the Son of God. So, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Meantime, Baylor doesn't know what to do because this is very much a situation where I heard many coaches say this subsequent to the Baylor investigation, and they were never saying it strictly because of the Baylor investigation, but you just you'll get the point. It's like you don't want the NCAA on your campus for anything because they'll be looking for something and they'll find 10 other things over here that they weren't even looking for. Right. And this is very much that kind of thing. This draws attention to campus, and then they find out, oh, wow, they're breaking every rule available. All right. So Dave Bliss, in attempt at self-preservation, they quite literally try to frame Patrick Dennehy as a drug dealer to be able to explain how he has all this money that it is now known that he was running around with, because his girlfriend was talking to the media and anybody else as well, talking about the players were using drugs and drinking a lot, extra benefits. And so Dave Bliss is like, hey, listen, if we can make people believe that he was a drug dealer, that can explain all the money. And then we can just say, hey, the money didn't come from us, right? These really uncomfortable, like, you ever been in a conversation with like three of your friends and then one of them says something and you're like, yo, I can't believe you just said that out loud. Like that, do not ever say that again. Don't say it to anybody else.
No comment.
I imagine. And so this young assistant at some point named Abar Rouse
Yes.
Who was, I didn't even realize this till I went back and started reading. He was hired on June 1st.
Yeah.
It was his big.
Which is why the story breaks wide open, because he just got to the staff. He's not embedded in the culture there. Like this is all happening, and he's like, "Wait, what?
What?" Yeah,
he's like, feels so uncomfortable that he goes and buys a tape recorder. It's like, no, if he's gonna talk about this again, like I'm recording this. Like, there's no way that I'm getting wrapped up and going down for this kind of stuff.
That's exactly right. Like, he did the honorable thing.
Yeah.
He's hired on June 1st. 11 days later is when Dennehy goes missing. A month later, or less than a month later, is when he's secretly recording his boss. And he turned in Dave Bliss. The Baylor athletic director resigned. Dave Bliss resigned. Got a 10-year show cause. And then Rouse's career essentially done.
Yeah. How terrible is that, by the way?
Well,
who does the right thing and is essentially excommunicated.
Because you know what coaches saw? Yeah. Here's what head coaches who were in a position to hire him saw. Okay, honorable that you would try to protect a young dead man's reputation, I guess. But I don't like you secretly recording your boss, and I wouldn't want somebody secretly recording me, so you can't work for me. And he got like 1-0 job after Baylor and then got out of coaching. And I read Dan Wetzel, our friend at ESPN, I
read it too. He did a great job out of Dan on this one, because Dotson is out. Continue. You're going to say it. But Dotson got out. Dotson got out earlier this year on parole for presumably good behavior after spending more than half the sentence in prison. But he caught up with the assistant in addition to.
And Rouse is now a warden at a prison in California, like an assistant warden at a prison in California. But one of the things he said he had either told coaches in the past or had wanted to tell coaches in the past, like what if it was your son and your son's college coach was trying to frame him as a drug dealer and you knew he wasn't? It was all a lie to protect this coach's NCAA reputation. What if that was your son? Your son got shot by one of his teammates, murdered by one of his teammates, was by and large a good young man, and his college coach tried to frame him as a drug dealer publicly to protect himself. How would you feel about that? Because that's the only way I thought about it. Like there's some quote he gave Wetzel along the lines of, when I recruit somebody, I sit down with their parents and I tell them, if you send your young man with me, your son with me, I'm going to do my best to protect him. He said, you know what? All coaches say that. Some of us mean it. Some of us don't. And I thought that was a really strong quote. And yes, until I read Wetzel's column, no idea Carlton Dotson was out of prison and was like living in Waco. He was back in Waco.
Yeah.
And I don't even know that I have a strong opinion on that. Although I think, broadly speaking, I don't mind murderers just staying in prison forever. You know, like I'd keep the violent people away from me. But I understand there's counter arguments to all of that. Either way, yes, in 2024, he was approved for release. And I think released, it's certainly within the past year, and has been living what I guess is a fairly quiet life throughout random cities, some of them in Texas.
When we discussed, in longer listeners to our podcast that followed, the Baylor 21 national championship, and we talked about what Scott Drew had done. This is the origin to that. Scott Drew obviously gets the job after this, a job that few people would have taken. He did take it. They got the lack of institutional control. He took the job under the most difficult circumstances imaginable for a college basketball program and a power conference at that point. And it is why, to see what he did with Baylor, and of course it took time, is truly nothing short of miraculous. Like, think about we've only in some ways just done a surface level recollection of what happened there in 2003, but this is as ugly of a scandal, and that is saying something, but this is about as ugly of a scandal as we've ever seen in college basketball. There's obviously been a few other pretty horrendous ones that have affected places like Michigan State and Penn State, but specifically on the men's basketball side, this is as bad as it's ever gotten, and it speaks to really Drew's, I say this, word intended, like his faith to be able to do it. And the fact that he got Baylor to a national championship is just wild to me. And Baylor being, objectively one of the 10 to 12 best programs over the past decade. When you see how close it came to being disbanded altogether. This story broke at a time when we didn't have social media, when there wasn't constant updates on television about stuff from a sports perspective, particularly in the offseason. But make no mistake about it, this is a horrible story, a huge story, and for all of the horrific nature of it, it nonetheless deserves a place in the top 5.
Yeah, and I do think everything that happens after this story makes the story even bigger. Like I think I've said this earlier when we were talking about Butler, and I mentioned like that's the movie. But I do sometimes think of these things as like movies. And you could start a movie with opening scenes or the scandal at Baylor, and boom and boom and boom. And then here comes this 32-year-old, fresh-faced, very inexperienced college basketball coach moving out of his comfort zone and home state to try to take over this, like, and then build it to what it became. That's a movie. That's a documentary. It's why Scott will be in the Naismith Memorial Hall of Fame someday. It's why, if anybody ever deserves a statue at a place, and I could argue coaches don't deserve statues. I could argue that if you wanted me to, but as long as we're putting them up, this is among the most obvious people working in college basketball right now who would be a candidate to get one at a particular school someday. He takes over in August 2003. There are plenty of people who told him he was crazy for doing it. He was 32 years old. Year 1, he went 8-21. Year 2, 9-19. Year 3, 4-13 with 0 non-league games because of part of the NCAA punishment. That season, Baylor didn't play its first game. I don't think is this ever happened before? Will it ever happen again? Baylor didn't play its first game of the season until January 11th.
Crazy.
And that was at Texas Tech. They didn't have their first winning season under Scott until year 5. That was the 2007-2008 season. Made the round of 64 of the tournament. Starting in 2008, so with that season, there have been 17 NCAA tournaments. And Baylor has been in 13 of those 17. And if we'd have had the one in the other year, it would be 18. It would be 14 of 18 instead of 13 of 17. Won the NIT title in 2013. Won the NCAA tournament in 2021. Before Scott took over that job, that program had made 4 NCAA tournaments total. History. 4.
Shouts to Bill Henderson.
Obvious legend. Made 2 Final Fours, but he was never as consistent as Scott. Bill Henderson, 3 NCAA tournaments in 18 seasons. Scott Drew has taken Baylor to 13 of the past 17.
I think it was fair at the time when Scott Drew took the job, even if you wanted to say, okay, or the year before the Bliss scandal happens, I think Baylor was at the power conference level, and keep in mind the topography of college athletics in 2002, 2003, different than what it is today. I think Baylor was probably regarded as one of the 5 worst jobs in power conference basketball. You see what Drew has done and turned it around into. It's remarkable and worthy of Hall of Fame inclusion.
So, and then of course he turns down Kentucky and Louisville, and I'll let Scott make his own career choices, but it seems more likely now than it did, say, 5 years ago that he really will probably just retire there. You think Scott Drew retires at Baylor? I
do now. I thought this past offseason, the one before, if he didn't move then, I think he's retiring there.
I mean, in the past 3 years, Kentucky, Louisville, and Indiana have all opened. Do we believe he could have had any of those jobs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Indiana didn't pursue the way some might have thought, but yeah, certainly Kentucky or Louisville.
Yeah. And so, it's amazing. It's one of the great college athletic stories. I mean, obviously the start of it is tragedy, but where Scott took it from there, it's turned into one of the best basketball programs in America, and led by one of my favorite people in the sport.
From one scandal to the next, let's go to number 3 on the list here, and it's from within the past decade. I know people listening have probably been waiting for this one, inevitable. The FBI's investigation into fraud and bribery in college basketball makes national headlines and puts the sport on edge for nearly 2 years. The date the story broke open was September 27th, 2017. I do remember it quite well. From a work perspective, it was quite the hell of a day. 10 people were arrested connected to college basketball that day, including assistants Tony Bland at USC, Chuck Person at Auburn, Book Richardson at Arizona, and Lamont Evans at Oklahoma State. Also arrested included Adidas executive James Gatto and up-and-comer in the recruiting and agent space, Christian Dawkins. It's been almost 8 years. Feels like twice as long since this story broke, but it is worth reminding people that when this story broke, and obviously by design, the FBI, works covertly, there was nothing out there about this. And it broke and it rocked college basketball. Now, whether when the charges were, bribery, money laundering, wire fraud, you can make the case that it was all just a huge waste of time. And I hear that for sure. But what's undeniable is how big the story was and everything that was fallout from it. I mean, this is the DeAndre Ayton $100,000 alleged payment, and people calling for Sean Miller's job on television like that week, and then Sean Miller holding on to that job and eventually getting fired in 2021 from Arizona. Frankly, from complications from this, Rick Pitino loses his job at Louisville. The NCAA eventually, 4 months after, makes the unprecedented decision to strip a basketball team of its national championship. Louisville's 2013 title is off the books. This had never been done before. This is all fallout. The Rice Commission is formed, which was a huge waste of time, but nonetheless is formed, and in some ways does continue to push along the story of, okay, what are we doing here with college athletes? And they're looking to get paid, and it's under the table, and it shouldn't be allowed. A lot of this stuff moved us to where we are today. Stick around. We got more on that coming shortly. But yeah, just an incredibly weird, sprawling story. I mean, I went down to the Southern District of New York's courthouse and reported and sat there in the church-like pews and listened to testimony after testimony, witness after witness, all of these different people, players, coaches, teams, programs, all interlaced together. Parrish, there were beliefs from some in the media at some point that this would lead to dozens and dozens of head coaches losing their jobs. That didn't happen. Just a big, big, wild, crazy story. Your thoughts?
My main thought, looking back on it, is that on the day it broke, it felt like it was going to be the biggest thing ever. And by the time we got to the end, it was kind of laughable. Like there's a pretty dramatic difference between where the story started and where it ended, because it starts with I think first we learn about it in like a non-traditional way. This wasn't a Woj bomb or anything like that. It was like coming from government officials. People have been arrested, press conference at this time. And then it's like a big show. And it's like, we got your playbook. There's all those little quotes. And
we got your play. Good call. Good call.
It was like, if you've ever broken a rule, you should come turn yourself in right now. That's what it felt like.
Yes.
We know what you're all doing.
Yep.
And if you've done it, you better come don't make us come get you. You better just call us and admit to everything. And it was like, oh my God, what's about to happen? And you know what actually happened? A bunch of people, most people didn't care about, had their lives turned upside down. And the people who were largely the big names connected to it, some of them had some temporary turmoil, but largely speaking, the head coaches whose programs were mixed up in this, they're mostly white guys, and they either kept their jobs or eventually lost them, but then got awesome jobs again. I'll just run you through some of them. Rick Pitino is now the head coach at St. John's, the team I have ranked number 1 in the top 25 and 1. Yes, things connected to this cost him his job at Louisville, but he's doing okay now. The stuff connected to this eventually got Sean Miller at Arizona, but he's now the head coach at Texas. It created problems for Will Wade at LSU, but he's now the head coach at NC State. Bruce Pearl survived the whole thing at Auburn, even when there was a time where it looked like he wouldn't. Do you remember that? Yes. There was reports BP won't cooperate with his own school. And I remember talking to people, and they were like, well, they're eventually going to get him. So the move here is you just delay, keep getting your direct deposits every 2 weeks for as long as you can. But eventually they'll get him. Bruce Pearl is still, they never got him. They got him contract extensions. but never got him in the way people suggested. And Andy Enfield is, he's at SMU. Am I missing people? Like, is there a single head coach who was running a program that got tied into this where it actually they never recovered again?
No. Because like Underwood had left Oklahoma State at that point, was at Illinois. You had the Lamont Evans connection because he was at South Carolina with Frank Martin previously. There was also, well, some I forget. Like even Creighton got caught up in it with one of its assistants, Preston Murphy, who's now on staff at Alabama. But they,
But the people who got popped good, that's Chuck Person, that's Book Richards.
Yeah. The ones that were, in terms of strictly arrest, but there were even more. I'm just drawing on my time in the courtroom. Like, were other assistants. Tony Bland, by the way, is back in college basketball. He's an assistant at Washington.
Right.
I saw him on the road earlier this month there. But yeah, I agree with you that when there's a vast difference from when the story landed to what actually came of it. But undeniably, there was tons and tons of fallout from it. Also, I understand a lot of these details have been kind of lost to time, but in reporting on this in the courtroom and seeing what a lot of this was like, it was instigated by the FBI to try and induce these. It's not like they found something where you had a ton of college basketball coaches that were truly conspiring to make sure that they were paying players hundreds of thousands of dollars, and there was this huge illegal ring of activity happening. That's not the case whatsoever. In fact, it was this former guy who was affiliated, who was looking to get busted on something else, that was trying to make films, that said, hey, I might have a tip for you. I might know of some college basketball coaches that are cheating. The FBI took that, tried to run with it. They got a little nibble on something, and they built this huge case into it. It was never what it was billed to be, but that didn't stop it from lasting 2 years overall. It was, you can argue, I guess, about the placement of this, but when it landed, this was the one story that had a lot of people being like, whoa. This is the story we've been waiting decades for, and this is going to be the thing that blows apart college sports. Didn't exactly happen like that.
And throughout those years, it's not like this all came out on day one. It would just be like a random day 7 months later, and it's like, and here's DeAndre Ayton, the DeAndre Ayton aspect of it. And then it'd be 6 months later, and there's like reports about the Kansas staff being on a wiretap.
Yeah.
And well, we have to do this way because that's the way, Kentucky does it, or Duke does it, or whatever. There was that little thing that was like, ooh. So you had some of that stuff, sort of just randomly coming out throughout the process. But
by the way, I totally forgot Will Wade eventually got pinched as a result of this from LSU, and we see where he is now. There's more. There's just
that wiretap,
so much attached to this.
Yeah. There was always these little things, but here's the thing: if you try to tell somebody this story, and you say, okay, let's start on September 27th, 2017. 10 people are arrested. Here are the programs that seem caught up in it: Louisville, Arizona, Auburn, whoever. All right. And then they go, okay, I ain't got much time, GP. Skip to the end. Where's everybody at now? It's like, well, the assistants are, there's some of them are back in, some of them are still struggling. Their lives got real difficult. Okay, but what about Patino? Oh, he's coaching the number one team in the country, making millions. Okay, but what about the guy at Arizona? Oh, he's now at Texas. What about the guy who was like strong-ass offer guy at LSU? Oh, he's the head coach at NC State. What about the one in the SEC? I guess it was at Auburn, where he wouldn't even cooperate with his school. Oh, they gave him a contract extension and a raise. He took him to a Final Four. It's just like nothing. Like everybody's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And to think it all started, that guy I mentioned before, Marty Blazer, he was, he had some like loose affiliations with, I want to say like boosters tied to Pittsburgh and North Carolina. And he was under investigation from the SEC, not that SEC, the United States Security and Exchange Commission, SEC. And he took a plea deal that basically said, I'll cop to this, and then I got something even juicier for you. And then it roped in all these people. Brian Bowen was the recruit at Louisville that brought them all in. Just, man, oh man, just, yeah.
And what is wild is that just a few years later, we were throwing millions of dollars around everywhere.
Correct. I just saw Christian Dawkins. I've seen Christian Dawkins on the recruiting trail like the past 3 years.
Oh, I saw TJ Gassnola,
TJ Gassnola. There's another one. There's one after the other. Yes.
I saw
who now works for CAA.
Yes.
TJ Gassnola, who was one of the key witnesses in the entire thing as it pertained to connected to Louisville and Kansas, and all a lot of this was Adidas schools, one after the other.
In less than a decade, we have gone from you've got to get TJ Gasnola and people like him out of the game to like get him back into here to Peach Jam. That's how much everything has changed. Like we went from a world where Bill Self got called a quote cheater because he was talking to Jim Gatto every day. And do you realize like that's part of the job now? Like you have to talk to those people every day. It's like it's an encouraged part of the job now. If you don't have those relationships now, you don't have a basketball program now.
Correct.
And so just what used to be frowned upon is now okay. And that's how all these schools can be comfortable rehiring all these people. There is a time where you would have swore, even in real time, even with your understanding of basketball, you'd have been like, I don't know if Rick Pitino ever gets a good job again. I don't know if Sean Miller ever coach at the high major job level again. Will Wade, might never make it back. And it's like, oh no, we're just going to change all the rules and rehire all those guys for more money than they've ever made. That's where we're at.
What a stride we've made from 8 years ago. We've got 2 more stories to go. And before that, I guess let's take a quick break, and then we got the top 2 biggest stories past 25 years of men's college basketball. First, a word from our partners.
All right, we're back. Top 2 stories past 25 years in college basketball. We're at number 2. Norlander, introduce it.
Well, the number 2 story is what's maybe the biggest story to hit our world this century so far, and how it affected college basketball. And that's
give it time. We got more coming.
I know, but so far.
We got more coming.
It's COVID canceling the 2020 NCAA tournament. Men's and women's college basketball did not hold a championship event in the year 2020. The NFL did. Major League Baseball found a way. They put the Masters in November. They put the NBA in a bubble. All major American sports found a way to continue somehow, some way, even if on a delay, to play their championships. That did not happen in college basketball. It's obviously the only time this has ever happened. And it just forever will be a huge what if. It has also put this weird hiccup into the way we see streaks and records, because there was a 2019-20 season. There was no 2020 NCAA tournament. The word surreal gets overused in our society, but this definitely applies, because we went from a situation where, okay, mid-February, this was on no one's radar, and then we curl into March. And it's like, people are really getting, like, people are dying across Europe from, like, what is happening? What is this? And is it coming our way? Well, sure as hell it is. And then Rudy Gobert kind of kicks it off. We remember that situation. But then in a matter of hours, 2 days essentially, we go from what is this going to be to, they canceled the tournament just days before Selection Sunday. I'm not kidding, Parrish. In some ways, this feels like it's been a decade since this happened, and in other ways, it feels like this was 2 years ago.
It feels like yesterday to me. I remember it.
Yeah. Some have said it's the worst pandemic of our lifetime. What do you say?
It was certainly the dumbest. It was the dumbest one of our lifetime.
It's also the dumbest. That's right. I was trying to take your saying. I couldn't remember the exact. The dumbest.
The dumbest. People used to get mad, and they'd be like, so they would either think I'm downplaying the pandemic or being hyperbolic about the pandemic. Like everybody
really was the dumbest.
And I just meant like quite literally what I'm saying. This is dumb. The way people are acting, the things we're fighting about. Like we've had other pandemics. Some of them I imagine worse. This is dumb though. We never had one this dumb. And so what I remember most about that time is how ignorant I felt with the benefit of hindsight. It is true when people say about us in America, we do kind of live in our own little bubble, and we just are ignorant to, not all of us, but a lot of us are just sort of ignorant to the rest of the world. I don't like to think of myself that way, but in this specific instance, I just remember feeling stupid. I was in New York the entire winter, every week, and I did start noticing other people acting differently. And I just never really clicked with me, but I would go to lunch. I'm sort of like I get into habits. Like I do the same things every day, for 6 months at a time. Then I'll find something new to do for 6 months at a time. But I'm pretty routine oriented. And I would go to this same restaurant every day for lunch. And I just noticed after a while, as March was approaching, it was just like everybody in there was in mask. And I'm from Mississippi. I'd be in, nobody had even thought about a mask down here, but I just sort of saw it starting to change a little bit. But I bet it was a week before the whole world shut down. And like, we were on radio and somebody asked me, so do you think your kids are going to get their school shut down? And I was like, I mean, I don't think so. I mean, maybe for a day or so. I don't think so. I was like, I don't know, but like, it seems crazy. Had no context for what was about to happen. So here's my story. You probably heard it 50 times. I'm at the CAA tournament doing sideline, CBS Sports Network. It's a Monday night semifinal, Tuesday championship game. It's Tuesday night, March 10th. I'm in Washington, D.C. Hofstra beats Northeastern to punch a ticket to the NCAA tournament.
Yep.
Like, I loved being there. I loved everything about that night. If you could find video, if you could find the game footage of that night on CBS Sports Network, I bet if you zoomed in, you would be able to see me sitting courtside. And this is hand to heart true. I had a bottle of Dayquil sitting on the scores table. That's how badly I was coughing that entire day, that entire night. Before I would do hits, I would swig Dayquil to just coat my throat so that I could get through them. Keep in mind, nobody's blinking. Nobody's even blinking. All right.
Give like 300 people COVID, GP.
I am interviewing coaches. Nobody has said a word, but you could find this. I have Dayquil sitting on the scores table. Do that game. I wake up the next morning. It's Wednesday. I fly from DC, probably DC to Atlanta, Atlanta to Memphis. On the way home, this is where it feels like it's starting to feel like the world's changing.
Yeah.
I think maybe a nursing home in Seattle had gotten hit.
There was that. Yeah. And then on the sports front, that's the night Fred Hoiberg looks like he's got to go to the hospital on the sideline of the Big Ten tournament. You got the Gobert stuff. Yes. Wednesday's the day.
I fly home on this Wednesday. I am coughing the whole time. And now it's starting to get uncomfortable to the point where people are looking at me like, oh, he's the one. This is on a plane. And I'm like, I feel fine, everybody. But like, it was so uncomfortable that you felt obligated to point it out.
Yeah.
I land and I call my doctor. And I said, hey, listen, man, I'm coughing a lot. I feel fine, but I am coughing a lot. I have been in New York City and Washington, D.C. I've been on planes. I've been on subways. I've been in arenas. I'm supposed to get back on a plane on Friday to go back to New York because Selection Sunday is coming up. And I feel fine enough to do it, but you're my doctor. What should I do? And he said, let's see if we can get you a test. And he called around, and the only way I could get tested is if I was willing to drive to Nashville and if I was willing to say, if I lied, I'd have to say I've recently been to Asia. Otherwise, they're not wasting a test on me. That's where we were at the time. All right. So I said, listen, I can't drive to Nashville and whatever. And he said, my advice to you as your doctor would be to not get back on that plane. Don't get on the plane on Friday. So that's that Wednesday night. On Thursday, I wake up, I call one of my bosses. I do not remember which one, but I remember this conversation vividly. I said, hey,
not that vividly. You don't remember who you were talking to.
I just don't want to say the wrong person and then be like, I never talked to GP. So I get two people in my head.
Okay.
I remember this. Here's the truth. I probably talked to 3 different bosses, but I remember one of them saying this. I said, I feel fine and I want to work. You know me. I've literally never called out a day of work my entire life. I'm there. You've seen me cough on set. I'm there for you. But my doctor is telling me he thinks it's risky, irresponsible for me to get on the plane. But I'll let you make the call. What do you want me to do? What should I do? And one of my bosses said, GP, I don't think anybody's getting on a plane on Friday. And that was the first time I heard from somebody, because at this point our bosses are having big meetings with big people. And that was the first time I remember somebody saying, you probably don't need to get on a plane Friday because nobody will get on a plane Friday. And then Kelly and I, my wife and I, we went to lunch, a little place 10 minutes from our home. And I remember this sitting at that lunch table. Do you think this is the last time we're going to have lunch publicly for a while? And it was like, maybe. And that night, is when I think Rudy Gobert stuff started to happen.
Well, the NBA suspended its season
that night.
Yeah.
And then NCAA tournament canceled
Next
the following day.
Yeah.
But it was like if you could see it coming like a barge, like off in the distance, like here's where our country is headed. And if you paying attention, you could see it coming. But I don't think enough of us were paying attention in the way that we like to think we were, because we went from thinking, man, how much fun is the NCAA tournament going to be, to, oh, buddy, we ain't doing that, and it's canceled forever. It was, I don't know exactly how to say it, like this slow building thing that felt like it just, boom, changed everything abruptly. But if you'd have just looked, you could have seen it coming.
Yeah, we don't need to belabor this story because we're going long as expected on this episode. But oh man, what a week that was! What a year that week was! It really was. And remember, by that Wednesday night when the NBA, I do remember this, when the NBA put its season on hold. That was even before that announcement came. It felt like the tournament was going to have to get pushed. How are they going to do this? And then when the NBA, I said, okay, tournament's not getting played right now. And then the next day they announced they were going to cancel the tournament. And then I had to doing some follow-up reporting and calling some sources being like, it's canceled. It's not postponed. It's canceled. It's done. And we're not going to stage this. We can't stage it 2-3 weeks from now for a variety of reasons. And then there was the debate over, well, can you at least give folks like the bracket as it would have been? Like, you've done a decent amount of it. Like, you can't just, and then that didn't happen, obviously, for some understandable reasons, but we were never even given a bracket. The best teams at KenPom that season in the top 6, 28-3 Kansas was number 1, 31-2 Gonzaga, number 2. Number 3 was 26-4 Baylor. Number 4, 29-2 Dayton. Number 5 was 25-6 Duke. And number 6 was 30-2 San Diego State. It lives as a huge what if. None of those fan bases have to live with the result of not winning the NCAA championship, and all of them can think that their team was indeed going to win the championship. In fact, one of our neighbors, she attended Michigan State, and I think they were 7th. But she was long out of college, obviously, by that point. But even for her, it's like we had Cassius Winston. We were so ready. We're coming off of making the Final Four the year before. So it lives on as this huge depression point, obviously, for a lot of fans. And there was, they staged the NCAA tournament every single year, except this one. Obviously, the year they didn't play it is one of the biggest stories in college basketball over the past quarter century. And if you'd like to relive parts of it, you can look up, I believe I titled it, I put the intro from our 2021 first episode of March. I titled it The Greatest Podcast Intro in History or something like that. Just search Matt Norlander YouTube. You can go back in the feed, go back to the first episode of March 2021, and you can get an audio version. I consider it my greatest work ever affiliated with this podcast, frankly. It kind of hits through this one after another audio hit of COVID coming and then canceling the tournament, and then all the steps that had to be made to ensure that in 2021 we were going to have a tournament, but it would be in the bubble, and so it happened, and so it was. But yeah, 2020 itself, just what a time.
The abruptness of it was, I am standing in an arena on a Tuesday night interviewing coaches and players face to face, no mask, nobody in the building has masks, everything is as normal as you could imagine it. 2 nights later, the NBA shuts down. The following morning after that, NCAA tournament's canceled. And really, by that weekend, none of us, our lives were the same. That's how quickly it all flipped on us. Yeah. And the fan base I always felt worse for is Dayton.
That's shortchanging San Diego State, though. 30-2.
I'll feel bad for San Diego State, too. But Dayton,
you've always had it out for San Diego State.
Dayton was going to be a 1 seed. They had a National Player of the Year, at least co-winner, and someone Obi Toppin.
Yeah.
So when are you ever at Dayton? When are you ever going to have the National Player of the Year and a 1 seed again?
I know.
Like the other 1 seeds, according to KenPom at least, would have been Kansas, Gonzaga, Baylor. Baylor has subsequently won a championship.
Yeah.
Kansas has subsequently won a championship. Gonzaga subsequently played for one.
Yeah.
Dayton, that might be there are Dayton fans who will sit around till they're 90
People
years
listening
old.
to this in their cars that root for Dayton right now that are just punching their steering wheel as you
just
bring
never
this
get
up.
it back. You just never. It's just gone forever. You know.
I
Just
know.
gone.
And we did think about when we didn't have the tournament. So like hard up for content. We did like a 2-hour CBS Sports HQ. Okay, here's what our CBS Sports simulation here. We're going to play out the tournament over the course of 2 hours. So I think you might've been, I definitely was on it for all 2 hours.
Sportsline
Dayton
did.
won our simulation. Like
Yeah.
we did a simulated thing. Dayton won the fake 2020 NCAA tournament as a result. So you'll always have that, I guess.
I was very happy for them. They deserve that. They deserve that. I was very happy for them.
Man, history. Oh, just there's wild time to think back on, and it's 2025 and think of where our world is today. Let's keep it moving with the final story. This should have been fairly obvious, I think, by the time we got to like the top 10, if you were following the podcast series. And it is, broadly speaking, from Ed O'Bannon to the transfer portal, NIL and revenue sharing legislation ends the century-old amateurism model. Really, the starting point for this story is in July of 2009 when Ed O'Bannon, former UCLA player in the 1990s, who was, by the way, a hell of a player, he sued the NCAA. And this stemmed from the fact that he saw his nephew playing an NCAA basketball game and noticed a dude that looked just like him, but didn't have his name associated with it. The EA Sports and the NCAA, they were profiting off of his likeness without his consent. It's an antitrust violation. Took him to court. And that led to where we are today for sure. But that particular case was overseen by one Judge Claudia Wilkin, if that name rings a bell. Yes, the same Claudia Wilkin who is now retired, but whose last bit of duty serving the court was to approve the House case settlement just last month. She's one of the most influential and important figures in the history of college athletics as a result. She oversaw the O'Bannon versus NCAA trial. Sided with O'Bannon. The NCAA appealed. There were more trials, more people brought in. This continued, that first part of this wrapped in 2014. This eventually got tied into the Alston case, and that's where the Ninth Circuit upheld the appeal. The Supreme Court eventually also weighed in famously in 2021, voting 9-0 on behalf of Alston, which enabled NIL legislation effective in 2021. And it set into motion what we have here today. There's also other stuff like the Senate Bill 206 that was passed in California on behalf of Nancy Skinner. That happened in 2019, where states started to take this upon themselves and say, actually, we do empower our players to be able to seek benefits for the name, image, and likeness. And what the NCAA is doing is an antitrust violation. And it's against the liberties of these college athletes that are profiting and not being able to profit off of everything they're providing to the NCAA and schools and conferences. And it's set up where we are now. We're not there. We're not all the way done. But 15 years ago, even less than that, players had no right to any kind of compensation legally. And now we've obviously had NIL legislation in place for 4 years. Even, earlier this week, I published a big story after spending time on the road about where we are, the reality of college basketball and college sports. Is this House case settlement? Are collectives really going to dissolve? Are they not going to be what they've been the past 3 or 4 years? This is an ongoing, evolving story, but the amateurism model ending and definitively ending after more than a century's worth of existence is, I think, indisputably the number one story in college basketball over the past 25 years.
Can't argue with that. It's the biggest game changer for sure. I think the frustrating part for some is that as we sit here in the summer of 2025, like in this moment, people don't know what the rules are. They don't know what they're allowed to do, like I was just at Peach Jam. I know you heard the same thing from coaches. Here's what multiple coaches told me. In recruiting right now, there's 2 kinds of us. Those of us who are being honest and saying, I don't really know. I don't know. I know we, in a different world, we have NIL money that we would throw on top of you. We don't know if that will be approved now. So let's just stay together and let's not agree to anything until we get some more clarity on what's allowed and what isn't. And then we'll do everything we can do for you. But I can't make any promises because it's a little blurry what we're looking at. There's those coaches. And then he said, and then there's the coaches who are like, oh no, nothing's changed. We got it for you. Everything you need, we're going to get it done. And they'll do the rest to get it done. But if they have to lie to get them on campus, they'll just get them on campus and be like, well, I thought we were going to be able to get it done, but now we can't. And man, isn't that unfortunate? But it's like, I heard from multiple people at different levels of the sport, recruiting is very difficult now because you don't know. We don't all agree on what's allowed and what's not. And we're not all saying the same things to recruits.
Yeah. And here in 2025, where, what the Ed O'Bannon, if you want to do the domino meme that everyone shares, and it's Ed O'Bannon watches his nephew play a video game in 2009 or whatever, or 2008. And then we have it here now where collectives are illegal or whatever it is. No one knows, to reference back to what I wrote earlier this week, some coaches told me collectives are going to go underground. And then and we mentioned this on a recent show, and this was reinforced by coaches. Like there is a tangible difference though. Like cheating is probably still going to happen, but you can't go. I quote one coach in my piece, who's a Big East coach, who said, you can't go to a booster and say, I need $2 million for a player. That's criminal activity. Like they're not going to, there's a difference between I need 75,000 to make sure I get this star running back, and I need 2 million because that's the new rate. So what's the balance in between those? And will collectives stand up to scrutiny from individual lawsuits from players? So again, we are going to eventually get to a place, I do believe, where players will collectively be able to bargain. And that's the place where, oh man, I mentioned this at the bottom of my story. I thought back, if GP and I went on to Peach Jam 7 years ago, 4 years ago, and said, hey, what do you think about players, forming a union, collectively bargaining, being employees, being able to make, $500,000, $700,000, $1 million? Most, not all. There would be some that would be, even as recently as 4 years ago, would have been like, no, come on, man. Like if they want to make, $50,000 off their name, image, and likeness, or if they're a superstar, I get it. And now when they see what the transfer portal and a true open market has done to their job, they're like, can we just get these guys, please, to unionize, to be employees, so they can come to school and sign a 2-year contract, so I can not have to worry about losing 9 players every single year. So we're not there with where we need to be. We'll get there eventually. It's going to take a long time, but it has been, from the media perspective, the podcast perspective, writing, reporting on it, as you and I have both done, Parrish, to see how this has crawled along, but still made its evolutionary process from the O'Bannon lawsuit to where we are today. And there were some people, very few, but there were some back at the very nascent part of this when the lawsuit was filed that did see, okay, this is what needed to happen. We will get there. Players will be paid. They will be recognized. Schools will pay players. We are there today. Schools are paying players. This very month, schools are paying their players directly. But it took a long while there, and it's been profound transformation at the college level. And I don't know what yard, if we're going to put a football analogy to this, I don't know if now we're at the 30-yard line, the 25, the 20. I don't know where we are, but we're a hell of a lot further down the field than we were 5, 10, 15 years ago. That's for sure.
Yeah, except, and I'm glad we're moving the ball down the field, but I still don't think we're in a good place right now. And I don't think we're going to get there until we unionize and collectively bargain. That's always going to be the end game. Anything short of that is going to just be messy, chaotic, and yes, create cheating. And I get so mad when I say this and people are like, cheating never left. Yes, it did, in the sense that we didn't call it cheating anymore.
It really did for the most part in the past 4 years.
I don't know why people can't grasp it. Every time I say it, somebody jumps in these stupid ass comments and is like, what do you mean it's going to bring cheating back? Cheating never left. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. I've explained it 50 times. Nobody is calling BYU a cheater for getting AJ DeBanza, even though they paid millions of dollars for him. That's what I mean. Everything was like, we know why people are going places. It's because of money. Nobody's cheating. They're just doing business. Now there are theoretically rules in place that is going to bring the cheating table. And the coaches I talk to, they don't like that, because they're the ones that get branded. The only reason people show up at LSU games in FBI outfits, mocking Will Wade, is because we created rules that labeled him a cheater. Absence of those rules, he's just a creative basketball coach. Absent the rules. So it was my go-to line forever. If you want cheating out of college athletics, you don't try to clean it up. That ain't working. You eliminate the rules, or at least some of the rules that create all the cheating. if you don't like handing people tickets, driving 55 and a 50 every day, raise the speed limit so that you're not catching them like this. So cheating had gone away temporarily. Now it will come back. And what the other funny thing I hear on the road talking to coaches is like the power conferences are the ones that pushed this house settlement through. They
Yes.
wanted this. And do you know who's pissed off about it now? Big Ten basketball coaches and SEC basketball coaches.
I think it's delicious, personally. Not that those coaches had any say in whatsoever in this, but yes.
Well, like, here's the thing. They don't even think they mattered. I talked to multiple coaches in those leagues, and they were like, our administrations and conferences just push this stuff through because they realized it would create all of these advantages for our football programs. But now we are in a disadvantaged place as basketball programs. So like I had one Big Ten coach tell me this. Do you know what the best thing for our programs actually is? For my program would really be? What we were doing 3 weeks ago. No rules. Fill up your collectives with as much money as you can and go throw it around.
Yeah.
That's what the Big Ten should want. That's what the SEC should want. Let us use all the money that we have more than everybody else and spend it. But now we've put this arbitrary cap on it. Most of our money is going to our football program, and I'm getting outspent by VCU. Like that's what I had coaches tell me that. Power conference coaches say our leagues created a system where VCU is out recruiting me now.
Yep.
It's crazy.
It is. But as I wrote on Monday, there have been trends, swells that have benefited certain programs over others for 100 years in college athletics. And this is the next stage. What comes after this, I'm not sure. But don't think just because you're in a place of power, you're always entitled to it. And now, because it's not the Big East or the A-10's fault, shouldn't be their problem. They don't to get all the pros of football, but they're not saddled with the expenses and everything that comes with it as well. And if this is what you want to make it to be with the salary cap, because guess what? Theoretically, granted, Parrish, we know how this is actually works. There's nothing forcing the Big Ten and SEC schools to spend all that money on football. That's where their priority. You're making that decision. Yes. We understand why it has to be. You could opt not to. Kentucky is spending by far more than any other SEC program in its men's back, because guess what? That's what Kentucky prioritizes. So I get, but it is, again, it's delicious to me that there's this cry of imbalance here coming from power conference schools, particularly in those two leagues more than all the others, where the deck has been stacked in their favor in so many ways. And now they see how this plot twist here. I find it interesting. That's all. And you talk to coaches. I talked to them. I quoted one of them in my piece. One of them still maintain. What was funny is one of them still maintains. I think the quote was, Ohio State's not going to let Xavier, Illinois is not going to let DePaul, and Virginia's not going to let VCU outspend them in college basketball. That's not going to happen. Now, how that's not going to happen, I don't know. Okay, you can claim it. And you've said that. I know you said this as well, Parrish. That's fine. But on a certain level, talk is cheap. I want to see the actions that come in the next year or two that prove that prophecy true. That's all.
Are you ready for this? The way the current rules from the House settlement are being interpreted by some, there is literally no way for some of these power conference schools to outspend legally St. John's,
yes,
UConn, BYU. I mean, not UConn, Creighton, VCU. Like, it's not possible to do it legally. Like, once these programs say this percentage of our 20.5 million in revenue sharing is going to football, at that point, based on what they tell us are the rules now for collectives, it doesn't matter if Virginia doesn't want to let VCU outspend it. Virginia can't outspend them legally. Can't. CAN''T can't do it. All right. So here's the next step in it. Once they stop saying, well, we ain't going to let that happen, and they realize there's really no way around it other than cheating, you got to get back to cheating, or you got to change the rules again. And I think both of those things will happen. We're going to get back to cheating, and then the rules will also be changed. Because here's what's going to happen. We're going to know that there's a 5-star Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Year point guard in the transfer portal, and he's picking between a Big East school and an SEC school. And we're going to know the Big East, sources are going to tell us, well, the Big East school is offering $5 million of its revenue sharing for this player. That's a big number, but you get the point. Yeah. And we're going to know that the SEC school doesn't have anything close to that in a budget for revenue sharing. All right. We're going to know this. And then that player is going to pick the SEC school. And you know what everybody's going to say? They cheated. I don't know how, but they clearly cheated. This is all you're inviting. The SEC and Big Ten and these power conferences have created a system where you are going to put your coaches in a position where they feel compelled to cheat to keep up. And when they cheat, the whole world's going to know that something isn't right relative to the way the rules are written, and they're going to get called cheaters again. That's where we're headed. It'll happen in the next 6 months to somebody. The Twitter will be calling some SEC or Big Ten coach a public cheater when they beat a A-10 school or a Big East school for a player when we know the money's not there from revenue sharing. That coach is going to get labeled again. These are the rules that you've created. This is what you've done to the sport.
And that's the number one story as it stands right now. But in the broader picture here, number one. Hope you enjoyed our long tour down memory lane. It was a lot of fun to look back on a variety of different stories. Some obviously more meaningful or impactful than others, but all of them I think intriguing and worth looking back on in their own way. GP. All
right, let's get out of here. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry Teagle. He's a legend. Huck Larnell. Thank you guys once again for watching and listening to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, Apple, Spotify. More of us than there are of them should be reflected in the comments. Do that, please, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Till then, take care.